All right, so it is the time of year that you either love, hate, or have no idea about. All right, we've officially entered eclipse season. Now, for some of you that may bring up anxiety. For others of you, you may be like, all right, bring it on. I'm ready for the change. And for still others of you, you're probably like, okay, so what does that mean? Eclipse season is when the universe officially snatches your wig off and helps you get your life together. But the way the universe does it is sort of chaotic. It's about things suddenly leaving or ending while new things are beginning at the same time. It's where the universe is like a huge chessboard and God or spirit is moving all of the pieces and you kind of have no control over how things transpire, right? Now, a lot of people, especially if you started watching a lot of videos about this upcoming eclipse, I see a lot of people fear-mongering. I've even heard one person say that during this eclipse season, like when the eclipses are actually happening, you shouldn't even be going outside. Like, is that real? So this video, suffice it to say, is not meant to fear-monger. As a matter of fact, this video is all about helping you navigate this eclipse season, specifically the upcoming full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra. So in this video, I'll be discussing everything about the eclipse, what you need to know, how to navigate the energy, and how to make the most of it. All right, so stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. If this is our first time meeting, welcome. My name is Mel. I'm a professional astrologer and healer, and I'm the founder of divinefeminineworks, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So this video is everything having to do with the upcoming full moon lunar eclipse in Libra, going down on Monday, March 25th at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, this is the point in the video where I say, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that a new moon is all about setting new intentions and planting new seeds. And a full moon is all about culmination and illumination. However, this is different because we're talking about an eclipse. Right? So an eclipse, specifically the full moon lunar eclipse, is like a full moon on steroids. And any eclipse, whether it's solar or lunar, is sort of like endings and beginnings wrapped up into one. So even though it is a full moon where we're experiencing this eclipse, and typically it would be about wrapping things up or illuminating something that's been hidden, or perhaps a manifestation that's coming to fruition, it's also about new beginnings kind of simultaneously happening. Now, eclipses are erratic. There's a lot of erratic energy. Like I said, it is the universe's way of snatching your wig and helping you get your life together. It's a time when we surrender and we sort of let the universe move the pieces about the chessboard, all right? And so they can be a little uncomfortable, especially if you find that something is quickly ending or something is immediately put in your path and you have to integrate it into your life. It can be a lot, all right? However, eclipses are necessary. A lot of things that we want, a lot of places where we need to go, people we need to see, we work in tandem with spirit, and spirit helps these things come together. And one of the ways that I believe that spirit does that is through eclipses, all right? Now, eclipses, I actually like them, if I'm being honest, because not only is it a time of surrender, but it's also the unfolding of the eclipse and how it integrates and plays out in your life is sort of like a mini series. So, quick astrology lesson. When it comes to eclipses happen at the nodes, specifically the lunar nodes. So the north node and the south node, okay? I did a whole video on this. It's right here if you want to check it out. Link will also be in the description box below. So each node, the north and the south node, they stay in a sign for about 18 months. And over the 18 months, you have two eclipse seasons a year. You have one in the spring and one in the fall. And so during that 18-month period, you have tag team eclipses between the north and the south node. And so when you think about it, it's like a mini series. So whatever house the nodes, or whatever houses the nodes fall into, this, or these, I should say, are the areas of life where you're not only going to experience the eclipses, but where you'll experience radical change in your life. And it typically plays out like a story. That's why I love eclipses. And if you take the time to really think about past eclipses, like the last time that the north node was in Aries and the south node was in Libra and the eclipses happened, you'll likely notice there is a progression with respect to that story. So it's really interesting and very insightful when you take the time to investigate and analyze how the eclipses work in your life. All right. So I've said enough of that for the meantime. So now let's get into the details of this video. And first, as always, we start off with some basics. All right. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about eclipse energy, full moons, and the Aries Libra axis, because that is where everything is going down. So first, full moons. Full moons has everything to do with culmination. It's actually halfway through the lunar cycle, and it's when your manifestations come to fruition. It's also when things that have been hidden are illuminated, right? It's the full moon. The moon is full, it's illuminated, so you can see a lot of things that you normally wouldn't be able to see. It's also a culmination, a crescendo, if you will, in a series of events. So with the lunar eclipse happening at a full moon, this is going to be a grand crescendo. Think about a symphony and that last note that's so intense. That is the energy of a full moon lunar eclipse, okay? And so we have that underlying energy of completion, of illumination, of things wrapping up in a major way. And remember, because this is an eclipse, you may find that something is eclipsed out of your life. Something ends, is terminated, moves away, stops talking to you, right? Like it can be a very abrupt kind of ending, which is why people tend to get very uncomfortable around eclipses, because it's just like things you may not have anticipated. Or in the case of this eclipse, being that it's a lunar eclipse, something may be really illuminated to you, like neon sign kind of illumination that may not necessarily feel the best, right? It may be like, hey, you've gotten fired. Or, hey, we're breaking up, we're getting divorced, right? Like it can be very intense. However, understand that eclipses eclipse things out of your life, or even if we're talking about a solar eclipse, eclipses them into your life so that you can have the best of whatever it is that you want. The universe is not arbitrarily giving and taking away for no reason. We are meant to live abundantly, and eclipses help filter out the garbage, the trash, the unnecessary things, the obstacles, even though it does it in a very sort of abrupt way. All right. So that's full moons and eclipses. So now let's talk about the Aries Libra axis. All right. So you know that there are 12 zodiac signs. However, the zodiac signs come in like pairs. So whenever you think of one, you're kind of simultaneously thinking of its pair or its counterpart. So this eclipse is going down in Libra, which is where the south node is. So thereby the north node, or the opposite sign of Libra, is Aries. So the Libra Aries axis has everything to do with me versus we. Aries is me, Libra is we. So it's about our sense of self, our identity, and our sense of self-autonomy on the one hand with Aries. And with Libra, it's like, okay, how do we show up in relationships? Like I'm an individual person, but how do I relate to other people? This is the axis that Aries and Libra pertains to. And so with the north node in Aries and the south node in Libra, since July of 2023, we have 18 months of tag team eclipses in these two signs. So it means that these eclipses have this undercurrent energy, or this energy signature of me versus we. And how do you reconcile the two? Because it doesn't always have to be I'm here, you're there. It's a seesaw of extremes. It's really about how do I integrate my self-autonomy while relating to other people and being in relationships, okay? So this is the story. This is the mini series that's been playing out from July of 2023 until January of 2025. So it's me versus we with Aries and Libra axis, right? However, you're going to want to look at your natal chart to see where, as I was saying before I was interrupted, and full transparency, this is probably the fourth time I've tried to do this video. The eclipse energy is super heavy. I know me personally, I've been feeling it for the last couple of days, and getting this video done has been a task, to say the least. But I am committed to bringing you this information, all right? So as I was saying before I was interrupted, you want to look at your natal chart to see where Aries and Libra are. Now, the undercurrent energy of this eclipse is relationships, right? It's me versus we. However, depending on where this is going down in your particular natal chart, it could be me versus we in your family relationships versus your career relationships. It could be me versus we, your personal assets versus your shared assets. It could be me versus we in literally you versus you, your committed partner, right? It has to do with relationships, but the type of relationship is going to depend on where Aries and Libra are in your natal chart, all right? So now that we've discussed Aries and Libra, let's take a little trip back in time. Remember I said before that eclipses tell a story. It's like a mini series. It's like an 18-month mini series. However, each 18-month increment builds on itself. So the last time Aries and Libra, where the North Node and the South Node are, like where the North Node was in Aries and the South Node was in Libra, and now that, again, the North Node is in Aries and the South Node is in Libra, it's like a continuation of this mini series. So let's go back in time to December 2004. Now, based on the demographics of this channel, you were either a toddler, right? Because a lot of you are 18 to 24. But then a good number of you are like in the 35 to 45 range. So you were probably in your teens or your 20s back in 2004. And I want you to think about what was transpiring between December 2004 and mid 2006, specifically June 2006. This is the story that is continuing during this particular Aries and Libra eclipse season. Now, this is important because astrology and the study of astrology, it's not just in a vacuum. It's not just, this is my sun sign, this is my rising sign, or this is my transit this year. There is a story of our lives that unfolds throughout the entirety of our lives, and astrology helps us understand that. And one of the ways that astrology helps us understand our lives is to notice patterns. The planets move in a system, and thereby they will reenact the same situations at different points in our lives. And at different points in our lives, we experience the same thing in a different way. And that's exactly what this particular lunar eclipse in Libra is doing. Now, I know this sounds a little attenuated. I know that this sounds like, wow, why am I thinking like 20 years before? Because there's something about this eclipse that is really bringing things to an end. And whether it means an end in finality, right? Like there's a relationship that's ending. There's a certain part of your life that's ending. There's a certain wisdom that comes with this ending that is super important at this point in time. So I implore you. Now, if you were a child, like a toddler in 2004 to 2006, while you may not get the same kind of wisdom or information, it's still important to understand, because understand that the Aries Libra axis is me versus we. So understand that 20 years ago, you may have been focusing on the me part. Maybe you weren't old enough to be in a relationship. Maybe you were really focusing on school, or maybe you were a toddler and focusing on your development. That's still very Aries kind of energy. And now that it is 20 years later, I want you to examine what kind of person are you? What kind of self-autonomy do you have? Perhaps in 2004, you might have been focusing on you. Maybe you were in school. Maybe you were focusing on your self-development. And now in 2024, now you're relating to other people based off that self-autonomy that you've been building since back then. I hope this makes sense. And I hope that you understand that, one, not only is astrology not in a vacuum and things build on itself, but that eclipses tell a story. Like I said, it's a mini series, and it's really about the continuation of that story. So what were you doing in 2004? And what are you doing now? And how does that me versus we dynamic between Aries and Libra play out now? That's the most important thing, because moving forward, the knowledge, the skills, the wisdom, most importantly, that you've gained from this self-reflection is what's going to help usher you into this new cycle. All right. I hope you understood that, because that is going to come up later. All right. So now that we've talked about the basics for the most part, let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is the numerology of this full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. All right. So I love discussing numerology because it gives you a lot more information on what is going on. So the numerology of this lunar eclipse in Libra is sponsored by the number 5 because it's going down at 5 degrees of Libra. So everything about this eclipse is all about change. And that almost seems a little simplistic, right? Because eclipses have this erratic energy. It is all about change. But this is designed to change your current situation. And of course, given that it's eclipse energy, it can be very erratic. It can be very jarring. So it's not going to feel good. However, it's almost like the universe is saying it is time for change. It's time for things to go in a different direction. It's time for you to let go of what's no longer serving you so that you can finally move into what is. And so everything about this lunar eclipse is going to be a little erratic. It's about shifting. It's about moving mountains. It's about getting you to a place that perhaps you've never been before. And again, this can feel very jarring and very uncomfortable. You kind of just have to ride the wave and let the universe do what it does, right? So when it comes to the mundane astrology, like astrology, numerology, it is the number 5, right? Which has to do with change, adaptability, flexibility, expression. When it comes to astrology, the number 5 is associated with Leo, right? Leo is the 5th sign of the zodiac. And Leo is all about being your unique self, right? So when we're thinking about change as it relates to this eclipse, this may be taking you in a direction that maybe no one else is going. Maybe this is taking you in a direction where you can be your authentic self, where you can really dig deep into what it is that you're passionate about, what you really want, who you really are, so that you can live that version of yourself, right? Also, when it comes to astrology, the number 5 is associated with the signs of Gemini and Virgo. Both signs ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is the shapeshifter of the zodiac, if you will. Mercury is all about moving, changing, shaking, baking, all of that stuff, right? So needless to say, I feel like the energy of this eclipse is going to not only be shifty, but it's going to be very sort of busy-like. There's going to be a lot going on mentally, a lot to process mentally, given that Gemini and Virgo are both ruled by Mercury. And I also feel like it's going to have you on your toes. It's almost like you kind of have to expect the unexpected. It's like you have to be able to be adaptable, be flexible, be able to move at the drop of a dime. And that's really how I want to say that that's how the universe likes it when there is an eclipse. The universe is like, I don't want you to be so stuck and so stagnant and so planted that I can't move you where you need to be moved. Like, you need to be flexible. And again, for some, that may be a tall order because maybe what is ending or what is changing is something that's been a mainstay in your life, or it's been something that you've relied on for a long time, and that can be hard. Needless to say, eclipse energy can really take you through the gauntlet, okay? I'm never going to mince that. I'm never going to deny that, right? This isn't about happy-go-lucky, oh, this is great to change. No, like, again, eclipse energy will snatch your fucking wig off, right? But you kind of have to let it. And you kind of have to see where it takes you. You kind of have to follow the bender and see where you end up. Because honestly, where you end up is probably going to be a lot better than where you started. And I mean that with sincerity, okay? So be adaptable, be flexible. Now, I'm going to get more into the astrology portion of this video. However, suffice it to say, the number 5 here, and when I look at the numerology of a full moon, new moon, or eclipse, or whatever it is, I look at what's called the Sabian symbols. And the Sabian symbols give an archetypal story for each sign of the zodiac. And when we talk about the 5th degree of Libra, it's this dreams becoming reality kind of a thing. It's like what I believe, what my thought process is like, literally shapes my reality. And I talk about this a lot because I'm a firm believer in your God self and your power to manifest, right? But this is an eclipse that's really going to show you what you are made of. And for some, this may be a very eye-opening experience. For others, this may be a reminder of what you knew before, but maybe you forgot. The fact that you are able to shape your reality, and this isn't in a love and light bullshit kind of way. This is literally thoughts become things. Your belief becomes your reality. So what exactly are you thinking and what exactly are you believing? And I feel like this lunar eclipse is really going to hold up a neon sign and let you know, listen, this is what you've been believing, but we are cutting this off, right? Especially if it doesn't serve you. Or this is what you've been believing. I want you to really see this in its fullness so that you can start doing more of this. The more that you think about the things that you want, the more that you believe in the life that you truly want, the more that you will have it, point blank, period. And this particular lunar eclipse in Libra is going to show you just that. So when I say that this eclipse is packed with power, I'm not kidding. So do not take this lightly. Don't sleep on this, all right? Don't get scared either. I don't want you to be like, oh my God, I don't know. Like, don't overthink this either. Don't think like, oh my gosh, every little thing I think is going to become my reality. No. Center yourself. Get right within yourself. Get right within your minds. And be flexible and be adaptable. And allow Spirit to take you where it needs to take you. Understand that we have a very limited view of things. If you want to put it in terms of an analogy, it's like we are chickens or something like that, right? Chickens, they don't fly very high. They see very much the situation around them. Meanwhile, Spirit is like an eagle. It can soar far above the trees and see what we cannot see. So at a certain point, we have to relinquish control. We have to surrender, which is exactly what eclipses make us do, and allow Spirit to take us where we need to go, to move the pieces, to move the mountains so we can get to where we need to be. So with the numerology of this eclipse, stay ready, stay flexible, and be adaptable. All right. So now that we've talked about the numerology, let's get into the specifics and talk about the astrology. All right, so let's talk astrology. So the astrology can get really technical. And I realized that at a certain point, you could sort of just say, okay, this is a lunar eclipse on the south node in Libra, right? And that could be the extent of the astrology. However, astrology is like a rabbit hole and you can get so much deeper and more technical. And so while I'm not going to get into the very technical specifics, because my videos are really geared toward people who aren't necessarily studying astrology, but more so want to know, okay, what's going in the sky and what does it mean for me? So in an effort to break it down in that vein, this is what the astrology is for this particular lunar eclipse in Libra. So, like I said, this is a lunar eclipse, so it's going down at the full moon. and it is in association with the South Node in Libra, okay? So when it comes to Libra, Libra is ruled by Venus. So Venus is one of the sponsors of this eclipse. Hence why there's going to be this undertone of relationships, or maybe even fairness or value when it comes to the subject matter of this eclipse. Meaning, however this eclipse plays out in your life, there's probably going to be an undertone of relationships or fairness, or maybe even things like creativity, beauty, art, all of that stuff, right? That's the realm of Venus. So Libra is ruled by Venus, which is one of the sponsors of this eclipse. However, the eclipse is happening at 5 degrees of Libra. Now, there are different ways, different methods, different schools of astrology that teach different things. I am a Western astrologer and I practice traditional Hellenistic astrology. And given all of that information, all that jazz, there's subdivisions within each sign, within each house that can give you more information. So 5 degrees of Libra falls within the term of Saturn. So think of it this way, and I know this sounds super technical, but think of it this way. Libra is where the eclipse is happening. Libra is ruled by Venus. So Venus owns the house of Libra. And like any house, it has different rooms, and each room is occupied by a different planet. So whereas Venus owns the house, each room is occupied by a different planet. So the eclipse is happening at 5 degrees. The room that the eclipse is happening in is occupied by Saturn. So it's like Venus and Saturn are the sponsors of this particular eclipse. Venus is the ruler of Libra, and Saturn is exalted in Libra, meaning that Saturn is treated very well in Libra. So there is a very positive aspect to this particular eclipse. So even if something is ending or terminating or changing irrevocably, it's like a blessing in disguise, okay? So we have the eclipse being sponsored by Venus and Saturn. But what's even more interesting is that Venus and Saturn are both in the sign of Pisces. And shortly before this eclipse, Venus and Saturn were at the same degree of Pisces, meaning that they were conjunct. This is very important because since they're both sponsoring the eclipse, their conjunction in Pisces has a lot to do with the eclipse, meaning that their conjunction colors the eclipse. Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces is like what you desire, what you want to make manifest. If you're willing to put in the work, you can actually make it happen. Point blank, period, right? So it's like when it comes to this eclipse, you have to understand that even if something is ending, right? Let's say it's a relationship, a romantic relationship. Those can be the hardest to get over. You've been with someone for a while, maybe you've been with someone for a long time, and now the relationship is ending, you're separating, you're getting a divorce, you're breaking up, whatever. It's like, it could feel like an existential crisis, right? It could feel like, oh my gosh, this is ending, what am I gonna do? That Venus-Saturn conjunction in Pisces is like, well, now that this relationship is out of the way, what kind of relationship do you really want? What's your ideal relationship? If you're willing to hold the vision, right, and work on yourself, like put in the work to have this relationship, you could have it. We removed that old relationship so that you could actually have the relationship that really fits you, that really speaks to your heart, or that's really about your authentic self, or that's really the ideal relationship you've always wanted. Maybe this past relationship you were settling. Maybe it was good for right now, but not for the long term. So we kind of have to get that out of the way so you could be like, listen, what do I really want in relationships? And make that happen. That's how that Venus-Saturn conjunction in Pisces is giving fuel to the eclipse in Libra. I hope this makes sense, sincerely, okay? Now, The other planet that's going to be instrumental in this eclipse is Jupiter. Well, it's one of the other planets that's going to be instrumental, but Venus and Saturn and Pisces are actually going to be sextile to Jupiter in Taurus during this eclipse. Now, what does all this mean? Jupiter is about abundance. It's about expansion. It's about personal growth and development. So when it comes to this eclipse, understand that whatever is ending, whatever is culminating, it's ultimately taking you to a new level. It's ultimately leading you toward your abundance. Never forget that, because it can be really easy to fall into the trap of this is ending. What am I going to do? I don't understand how I'm going to move forward. Jupiter is like, listen, honey, if you're willing to stretch your mind a little bit, if you're willing to think outside of the box and entertain other possibilities, I can give you more than what you asked for. But you have to be open to the opportunities that may be coming in right now. Perfect example, let's go back to my analogy before, right? You have a relationship that's ended. It's done, kaput, divorced, separated, breaking up, whatever. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this ended. Venus and Saturn are like, okay, so what do you really want? Okay. And then Jupiter is like, listen, I'm bringing this person to you. And you're just like, I don't know. I've never encountered someone like this. This is different. Jupiter is like, entertain it. This may be what you've always wanted. Understand that I feel like the energy of this eclipse is like blessing in disguise. It's like what is ending is really for your good. It's leaving space. It's creating a void so that you can experience what you truly want. But you have to understand one thing. Venus is all about value. Venus is all about love, but here it's going to be about self-love. Okay. So whatever's ending, to not repeat that same cycle, you're going to have to instill a belief system of self-love within yourself. You're going to need to have the discipline to love yourself first, right? That fairy tale romance comes to you because you've created a fairy tale character within yourself. Hopefully that makes sense. It made sense coming out of my mouth, so hopefully it makes sense to you. But loving yourself first, setting boundaries when it comes to relationships. That can be a tough one, right? Especially if you're on the tail end of a relationship that's not working, right? Or if something has ended, you may just want to fill that void really quick with anything or anyone that will not make you feel bad or not make you feel sad or whatever. Resist the urge to do that. Understand your worth, understand your value, and understand what your ultimate goal is. If you want to be married with kids, or if you want to have the job of your dreams, right? Let's use married with kids for an example, because I think this is an example that we can all understand. Then don't entertain a fuck boy or a girl that's just using you for your money. Like, this is where you have to set boundaries and be like, listen, this may feel good for the moment, but it's not good for the long run. You have to have the discipline to discern these different type of situations, right? And then Jupiter is like, step outside the box, experience different things, experience different people, move out of your comfort zone, allow yourself to experience life so you can learn. And that learning is going to help you form a new belief that will become your reality. All right. Now, the fact that the main planets in this particular eclipse are Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter, particularly Venus and Jupiter, these are the two most positive planets. So a lot of positivity is at our disposal with this eclipse. And please don't forget that, especially if you find that this eclipse is really hard, it's draining, shit is hitting the fan, you don't know what's going on. This is all working out for your good. I guarantee this to you. But you have to be willing to be self-aware, right? You have to be willing to know your worth, and you have to be willing to play the long game. Anytime we're talking about Saturn, we're talking about a marathon, not a sprint. So this isn't about just getting over this hump or just getting this one job to get the next. This is like, what is your long-term plan? And are you willing to commit to it? If you are, the opportunities are going to start coming to you. You're going to start attracting them. So stay the course, no matter what craziness this particular eclipse evokes. Okay. And speaking of craziness and intensity, the last thing I'll say about the astrology of this particular eclipse is that it's going to be trine to Pluto. Okay. Pluto is all about change. Speaking of the number 5, right, as this eclipse is sponsored by the number 5, numerologically speaking, with Pluto, the planet of death, rebirth, and transformation, the universe is like, listen, I'm trying to give you a completely different life. And that different life is truly in alignment with what you want. But you've got to let go of the fuck shit you've been doing that's been standing in your way from having the life that you want. And it all starts in the mind, because Libra is an air sign. Pluto is currently in an air sign, Aquarius. So this is like, we are changing your mind. Remember, I said this is a full moon, so it's going to illuminate things that have been hidden, like giving you a neon sign. That neon sign is meant to change your mindset. And in changing your mindset, that's how you change your reality. So take heed to what happens around this eclipse. And a thing that I should have mentioned before is that don't necessarily expect the world to shift on the day of the eclipse. It may not be anything that happens on the 25th. However, 3 months after, right, sometime in July, you may have an event, a happening, an illumination, an awakening, an epiphany that continues this mini series called Eclipse Season for you. Things happen in waves. They don't necessarily, especially with eclipses. It's not going to be like, okay, on the 25th, something major is going to happen and then blah, 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 blah. It could, however, it could be something that is subtle that happens on the 25th. And then 6 months later, it's like, boom, you hit the crescendo. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So don't expect the world to change dramatically on the 25th, but be open and adaptable to things changing around you within the next 6 months. And be prepared for profound change. We're at a time where clearly the world is changing profoundly. So why would you think that you wouldn't be changing profoundly as well? This is the time to really make shit happen. So be open to it. All right. So now that we've talked about the numerology, the astrology, let's talk about how to really use this energy. All right. All right. So in terms of how to use the energy. So when we're talking about manifestation, typically the bulk of our work is done, new moon to full moon. So when the full moon comes around, especially now that we're talking about eclipse, full moons are more about observation rather than manifestation. That's when the fruits of your labor are born. That's when things come to fruition. And especially with an eclipse, this is the time where you want to let the universe do its thing. And when the dust settles and you have a lay of the land, that's when you take action moving forward. All right. Now, you'll have different people saying different things. Some people are like, yeah, if you're really with the shits and you really know your magic and all of that, then sure, manifest at the eclipse, right? Other people will say, yeah, don't even go outside during the eclipse. Like, it's that serious. You have to know for yourself what's good for you, and you have to listen to spirit. How spirit speaks to you, how spirit directs you is a very personal thing. So keep that in mind. For some, this may be a time where you literally just chill and you let shit happen how it's going to happen. For others, spirit may be guiding you to do certain things at this time. Listen to your own connection with spirit. However, I will say what I love about eclipses is that you kind of just surrender. You surrender and let things happen as they will. You let the chips fall where they may. And for some, that can be really unnerving because especially if you're an A-type personality and you're someone who's like, I got to control this, I got to control that, the eclipse may come in and just knock all of your chips over, right? It may just make a mess of everything that you've tried so hard to keep control over. And that's fine. You kind of have to let it be what it is going to be. And again, listen to your intuition. Listen to what spirit is guiding you to do at this time. Eclipses, apart from the fact that you have to surrender, eclipses are a great time, and it's a reminder that we work in tandem with spirit. We work in tandem with God. We don't control everything, just like spirit and God doesn't necessarily control everything in our lives. We work together. And so this is when spirit is like, all right, I'll let you drive the car for a while, but right now I'm going to take the wheel and I'm going to do what needs to be done to get us to where we need to go. So ultimately, when it comes to what to do with this energy at the eclipse, surrender, listen, observe, tap into your highest self, your connection with your highest self, and allow your highest self to drive. Allow your highest self to take the wheel and just see where it takes you. All right, so now let's get into the messages that are channeled for this particular eclipse. All right, so first up, we have a time of faded endings and a time of purification, cleaning up and removing the rot or bad habits. So some of the neon signs that may come up for you are perhaps your shortcomings, your bad habits, where you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that can be kind of jarring, right? Because when it comes to humans being human, we tend to be a little ego-centered. And we don't necessarily like it when we hear what we're not doing well or what we need to get rid of. However, this particular eclipse, I feel like, is going to tell us loud and clear what we need to get rid of, particularly within ourselves. Now, even though this eclipse is going down in the sign of Libra, and Libra is the sign of relationships, relationships ultimately start with us, because relationships are merely a reflection of what we've got going inside, right? So if you're in a relationship that's toxic, that's this and that's that, that's negative, typically it's a sign of what's going on within you. So it's time to do some cleanup, and it's time to get to the root of toxic, obsessive, or bad habits. Okay, so definitely take the time to examine that at this eclipse. Next, the clock strikes 12. Like Cinderella, I remember when I was writing this down, I was like, yeah, I saw this vision of Cinderella and how at midnight, it's like she turned back into it was the pumpkin, the dress was, turned into her tattered old house clothes. Like something about the clock striking 12 is like this element of finality, of fate almost. And it's not to say that it's literally the 12th hour. It's just, that's how spirit explained it to me. The time has come. Something you've waited a long time for. Fantasy and illusion versus reality. So it's like she had the whole getup, right? Like she had the pumpkin turned into the carriage, and the dogs turned into the horses drawing the carriage. And she had this whole outfit, right? And then midnight struck and all of that went away, and she was like back into her reality. It's like we're teetering the line between fantasy and reality, and it's important to discern the two. Not to say that the fantasy cannot be the reality. However, to have the fantasy, you need to understand the reality, right? That is going to be very important. Spiritual assistance from beyond. So you remember how she had the fairy godmothers and they were able to help her with things? All of us have the same thing. We have help from beyond the veil who are taking us from Cinderella, the peasant, to Cinderella, the princess. Okay. Understand that you can go from rags to riches. That's something that this particular eclipse is colored by, right? But understand that it's not a solo mission. Understand that you have help with this. You have fairy godmothers. You have guardian angels. You have ancestors. You have your spirit team. You're not alone with this, all right? Hopefully that makes sense. Alignment. Finding those in the same wavelength. So there is a part of this particular eclipse or maybe for some, this may be the theme of this eclipse, where it's like you're finding your soul mates and or your soul family. So once the eclipse gets rid of the riffraff, right? And what no longer serves you, it's like now you can really be your authentic self. You can really dig deep into your heart and figure out, okay, what kind of relationships do I want? And now these are the relationships that's going to be attracted to you. These are your soul mates and your soul family. So leave room for them. Understand that whatever is leaving, terminating, ending, coming to a conclusion right now, if it is no longer in your life, it's leaving room for even better. Okay? All right. Next, personal power and empowerment. This is very much Aries Pluto energy. So there's a focus on self and self-development. I think I touched on this before. Libra is a sign of relationships. Relationships are merely a reflection of ourselves. The more empowered you are in yourself, the more self-autonomy you have in yourself, arguably the healthier relationships that you have. You attract people that respect your self-autonomy and have their own self-autonomy. It's like, listen, I have a full life. You have a full life. Together, we've got two full lives. It's not like I'm half a person, you're half a person. We're supposed to come together and be a whole person. Like, that ain't it. Okay? This is more about I'm a whole person, you're a whole person. Let's be whole people together. Okay? Next, knowing and understanding your worth helps bring equilibrium to your relationships. Stop settling and people pleasing. I love Libra. I have a Libra stellium, so I'm very familiar with Libra energy. However, one of the pitfalls of Libra energy is people pleasing, and I fell into this trap very, very deep. Keeping the peace, wanting to be liked by everybody, wanting to look a certain way, not wanting to show the ugly side of yourself because you think people won't like you, blah, 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 blah. No, that ain't it. And if that's how you've been operating, wow, this eclipse is really going to snatch your wig off. Like, this is going to be difficult for you because even though this is Libra, Libra is like, listen, it has to be equal. I can't be giving. Because all I'm going to do is attract people that take. Libra's like, I like relationships, but not at the cost of myself. That's that Aries Libra axis. I'm whole in myself, and therefore I show up in relationships whole, so I attract whole people. I don't need to people please. I don't need to placate to people. I don't need to settle. I can be me unapologetically. That's that Aries energy. And I will attract people who are the exact same way and love me just like I am. That part. Next, creating stability in new relationships. Getting rooted, grounded in new groups and associations, and taking on a new identity. That's one of the things that I honestly love about this particular eclipse is that it may find you terminating a certain part of yourself, a certain identity that you've had. Perhaps you've been someone's girlfriend, someone's wife, someone's husband. You've been known as part of this group or this pairing or this partnership for so long. And the fact that it may be ending or changing irrevocably at this eclipse means that you have the possibility of a new identity. And in this new identity that's hopefully in alignment with who you truly are, you're going to attract people who reflect that back to you. So this is revolutionary. The minute that you really step into who you truly are, even if you have a relationship that's not ending, that relationship is going to change for the better. And if you do have a relationship that's ending, oh my gosh, the doors that are going to open for you are going to be phenomenal. Okay. Expect some tension and frustration as you form new partnerships and learn more about yourself. Be kind to yourself and others as you let go of the past. This is happening for all of us, and it's not easy. Some people may be acting like it's not a big deal, but it is. Other people may be losing their shit right now. Be graceful. To be kind to yourself and to others Have compassion and grace for yourself and others. We're all going through this right now. And it low-key kind of sucks, but it's also low-key kind of wonderful. Okay. Next, taking flight. These new relationships are meant to help you take flight. If not, they may not be the relationships for you at this time. There's also this element of same species or twins or being equally yoked. Birds of a feather flock together. Okay, so what I saw when I got this message was literally birds and butterflies. So species that have wings. This is about your evolution. It is about your ascension. It's relationships that allow you to expand and take flight. So the litmus test at this time is if you find a relationship that keeps you limited, if you find that you're in a relationship that clips your wings, that ain't the relationship for you, my love. This is the time for you to expand and expand with someone. You give each other the room to expand, and you will find people that resonate on the same wavelength. Like I said, birds of a feather flock together. Okay, next. Mourn whatever is lost or is ending. Feel everything. Do not stifle whatever feelings come up at this time. Rather than stewing in regret or sadness, ask yourself, what are these feelings trying to teach me or show me right now? Emotions are meant to be felt. We live in a society where we are not conditioned to feel emotions. We escape from them. We suppress them. Even when it comes to things like pain, we take pain killers, right? Think about that. Pain killers, where we kill the pain, we don't feel it. You have to feel emotions. That's how they operate. And so this isn't to say that if you're feeling sad, you need to stew in that sadness, but you need to recognize what that sadness is and where it comes from. And if something is ending or something is irrevocably changing in your life, mourn that loss. It's okay to feel sad about it. It's okay to feel even depressed about it, but understand that this too shall pass. And because of how this eclipse is set up, this is really a blessing in disguise. So please do not forget that. Next, peace above all else. I'm going to say that again. Peace above all else. Find it first within yourself, and then it will be reflected back to you in your relationships. Self-explanatory. Peace above all else. Next, don't be afraid of whatever emotions come up. Explore them. So relationships can be challenging. Many times it's where we experience the most trauma, the most wounding, the most hurt, the most insecurity, and we tend to just stuff it down. We tend to not address it. This eclipse, like I said, it's going to hold up a neon sign, right? And tell you what it needs to tell you. And for some, this neon sign may be emotions, could be anger, frustration, insecurity, sadness, depression. Feel it, understand it, and don't suppress it. And finally, allow your intuition to guide you. It has a lot to say right now, so listen. Lots of guidance from the higher realms, so tap in. This goes back to what I was saying before about the whole Cinderella thing, about how she had her fairy godmothers. You have fairy godmothers too that are helping you on this journey, but you got to tap in. They're not going to help you unless you ask for the help. So get into your meditation, get into your prayer, do what you need to do to tap in and listen to your intuition, because that may be the only thing that guides you throughout this storm called the eclipse. Okay. All right, my loves. So that concludes this video on the full moon lunar eclipse in Libra. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can use going into this eclipse season. All right. For information on all my products and services, you can find that either linked to the video or linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy eclipse in Libra, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.